things just got a lot more difficult for Ukraine and President Volodymyr Zelensky after Donald Trump seemingly called for new elections in Ukraine so that Vladimir Putin could install a president who will bend the knee to Putin and possibly give Donald Trump the rare earth materials that he wants. This all happened during a press briefing at, you guessed it, Mar-A-Lago. That's where Donald Trump spent his President's Day weekend, surrounded by the billionaires who don't give a damn about the American people or about democracy. It has become very apparent that Donald Trump is working hand in hand with Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine, the war that Vladimir Putin and Russia started in Ukraine. Trump is working with Putin to end that on their terms.
Do you have any message for Ukrainians who, after 3 years of fighting, might feel betrayed or disappointed at not having a seat at these initial talks in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think I'm really disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. 1,000-year-old domes that are so beautiful, you can't replace that. The whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago. You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And by the way, we wouldn't have had October 7th. You know that. We wouldn't have had October 7th either in Israel. And we wouldn't have had that mess that's going on over there. It's like we have great fire people here. We're putting out fires. All over the world we're putting out fires. So that wouldn't have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? Inflation. Because it was caused really by the cost of energy going through the roof because of their bad energy policies and also their spending, their terrible spending, wasteful spending on the Green New scam.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine. Well, we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. So many of the cities. They haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. It's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down than in Gaza. So, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, we have to They have to pay. They have to find out where is the money going to. We have, I believe, President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion, but let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe because Europe has given us given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic. It's so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taken place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. You know, when they say they took a poll and Zelensky's at 4%, who's living there? You know, I mean, it's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down. And this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
Follow-up question. How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing for this, obviously, they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort? How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal?
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in, don't go in, don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested, I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. And, you know, it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please.
This statement coming from the man who said that the war would end before he was even sworn in if he were to win the election. And of course, that never happened. Nothing that this guy says is true. He criticized Biden for standing with Zelensky and Ukraine. Of course he would criticize President Biden for standing with democracy. He says that he warned Putin, don't go in, don't do it, when during President Trump's first term, Vladimir Putin was surrounding the Ukrainian border with troops preparing for the invasion. So maybe Trump said, don't do it, don't go in unless I lose the election. And then, of course, you have free reign. Of course, Trump doesn't really, give us the full truth ever. It's also clear that he's still campaigning here. This would have never happened if I were president. It never would have happened. He said that more than a dozen times throughout this press briefing. He kind of gets stuck in his campaign speech because if you remember during his campaign for the presidency, he would say that over and over and over again in his campaign speeches. So when Donald Trump gets stuck, kind of seemingly like almost obvious, it's obvious that he is working with Putin and doesn't give a damn about democracy or Ukraine. He just kind of reverts back to, well, wouldn't have happened if I were the president, which has nothing to do with where we are today. And then he also kind of brought up the any half-baked negotiator would have stopped this war from happening. Again, putting all of the blame on Ukraine, saying Ukraine has had a seat for 3 years. Yeah, they've had a seat for 3 years, a seat where they've been strapped to it and tortured by Vladimir Putin. Like that's the imagery that I thought of when Donald Trump was talking about Ukraine having a seat at the table and how they could have prevented this. Yeah, they're being tortured. And Trump is over here like standing with the people who are doing the torturing, blaming the person strapped to the chair. It's really enraging listening to Donald Trump talk about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin the way that he does, where he's putting all the blame on Ukraine and having peace talks with Putin. This is not going to work. If anything, this is putting more stress on America's relationship with Europe, because now the Europeans are going to have to step up as the leaders and as Ukraine's biggest source of support, because it's very clear that Donald Trump wants the adoration. He wants to be buddies with Vladimir Putin. He has business ties in Russia, and he doesn't give a damn about America leading the world in the fight for democracy. So let me know what your reflections are down in the comments below of Donald Trump and his remarks here, blaming Ukraine for having a seat for 3 years and not doing anything to end the invasion which they've suffered. And also, if topics like this interest you, be sure to subscribe to Reflect Politics so that you get my future videos delivered straight to you. Thanks for watching. My name is Brendan Plank with Reflect Politics. I'll see you in the next video.